Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between training and on-field performance.
I'm Brett Hart, owner of Hitman Performance.
And I'm Dan Labadia, the owner of Jack Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show. Welcome back to this episode of The Gap. We have two fantastic guests, in my opinion, some of the best strength coaches in the industry and definitely on the come up for what they're doing at IHT. We have Zach Jungels and Jared Slater. Fellas, it's an honor to have you guys on here. Tell them a little bit about yourselves, what you care to share, your background, your knowledge, your expertise. We're going to get into a big rabbit hole. I mean, we just talked for probably 10, 15 minutes before this episode, and I'm fired up for this hour that we got.
Well, I'm Jared. I don't know where to start. Okay, I guess so I played baseball in college. That was my sport. And then like most athletes that sucked at their sport, I was like, well, I want to do something to stay in this, but I'm not very good. So I was like, well, undergrads in exercise science, might as well continue with that. Finished that up, did a couple internships. My favorite one was at TCU, intern under Zach Jungels, and that was kind of my intro to, I wouldn't say like traditional S&C, like my intro to, let me get a little bit outside the box, because even though Jungels is very, very by the book, he does a lot of things that are, you could say are like different. So
Jared, real quick, how do you pronounce his last name?
So it's Jungels.
It's Jungels.
Yeah, it's not.
I've heard it pronounced like 10 different ways, and I never know which way is the right way.
When I was there, he goes, I called him, I said to Shane, he goes, it's not my name. And I was like, oh, sorry. So anyway,
that's how he talks too. Oh, sorry.
But anyway, after that, I went to work at Tread Athletics. I was there for probably like 8-9 months. My goal was work at Tread for a little bit, then hop back and try and get a college job. Ideally Power 4 with the baseball team, and some things happened. And then after that ended up, opening up IHT, hiring Zach, and it's kind of the condensed version of kind of to where we are now from my side.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for having us on. We're really excited to get into it. My name is Zach Jungels. I'm from Rochester, Minnesota. I played football at St. John's University, small D3 in Minnesota. I'm kind of in the same boat as Jared. Like, I sucked at football. I always struggled to find a way on the field. In Minnesota, football isn't as popular as like maybe basketball or hockey. So skills training is kind of hard to find, but good S&C is not hard to find in Minnesota. There are a lot of great coaches up there. So, I fell in love with lifting pretty early on. And it helped me get on the field, right? Because I was just a terrible athlete all around. So any, level of strength or speed or explosiveness really, really helped me on the field. So that's sort of where I found my love for strength and conditioning. My college S&C coach had hired me to like go out to local high schools and coach their programs. So I coached about at three different high schools till I graduated. Then I went out to Springfield, Massachusetts to start my my master's program at Springfield College. I lasted about 10 weeks there and I dropped out. And I'm like, this isn't for me. I can't do it here. So I moved back in with my parents in Minnesota, and I started my own business where I worked with 2 different high schools at the same time. And around that time, I was like, there's something more out there. I gotta go find out a different way to do things. How I was coaching, I was getting kind of good results, but I needed to find that next level. So I started interning at the University of Minnesota with Cal Dietz and the hockey team there. And for anybody that knows anything at all about triphasic training, it looks a lot different now than it did maybe 10 years ago or when the first book was out. So a lot has changed there. And interning there was a really, really eye-opening experience. I learned a lot about how to get results with athletes, and I hope we can get into that a little bit here. But at that time, last November, Jared and I were talking over Instagram about Square One, and Square One's a system that we met mutually through because he was getting some really, really, really good results in the summer of 2024. And I was working at these high schools. I had a ton of kids that had like injuries and pain and like back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, all this stuff. And I was throwing Square One at it, and I was getting like mixed results. Like one kid would get better, one kid wouldn't. One kid I would spend 4 sessions with, nothing would happen. Another kid I'd work on for 15 minutes and their pain would be gone. And so I asked Jared to give me some advice. The advice he gave me ended up working so well that I'm like, I got to keep talking with this guy. So we stayed in touch while I was at the University of Minnesota, kind of learning everything there. And then around November, he's like, hey, I'm opening this gym. I want you to come be my assistant director of performance. And I was like, that sounds sick. Like Charleston is an awesome city. I've heard nothing but great things about it. So let's do it. And ever since then, we've been working to try and open up this gym. And I'd say it's been going really well.
Yeah, I'd say it's going pretty well.
So
So with the creation of IHT, what does that actually stand for? How'd you come up with that name? And then, what's your essentially your goal and your mission with that facility?
That's a great question. So IHT stands for integrity, honor, and trust. And when I was trying to think of the name for it, I was, I was going down the rabbit hole of, okay, let me make it sound cool and, like impactful, like, let me put some like big word there that makes people want to be like, that just like brings like a feeling to it. And I was like, well, that's not really what I want. And so I kept thinking about it and I was like, well, the thing missing in the industry the most is coaches that have integrity, that are honorable and that you can trust them. And their athletes trust them, the coaches trust their athletes. So to me, I was like, well, let me just, quote unquote, put my money where my mouth is. Let me just put it out there in front so people know that, hey, like this is what we're about. These are the values we're about. And so the reason why those two, one, integrity. If you're not doing it for the right reason, I mean, you shouldn't be doing anything at all. And that's just my opinion. Like if you're going to be a strength coach, you should be in this because you want to get the best results possible. Like if you do anything in your life and your goal isn't to be the best at it, I don't see a purpose in doing it. Like if you choose whatever it is, even if you want to be a garbage man, you be the best damn garbage man that you can. Like whatever it is you want to be, you want to build cabinets, like be the best at that. So that's where that comes from. The honor is because we're here for other people. We're gonna do the honorable thing. We're gonna make sure that what we do is true to us and is true to our athletes. And then again with trust, like our athletes should trust us that no matter what issue they have, we can fix it. And that goes hand in hand with, wanting to be the best at something. Have not being the Mr. Know-it-all, but having the answers and having the plan to attack any issue there. That's kind of the story behind IHT. It kind of came to be after I left Tread, I had applied to some other jobs. And I had some offers to do some other stuff. And I was talking to my fiance and we were like, I want to be able to, have a family and, be around and not be in college. And because, man, being in college, you're there from, 5 in the morning until 7:30 at night, Monday through Friday. If you're with the team, you're traveling to the weekend. So I was like, well, it's not really sustainable if I want to have a family. And so I ended up saying, what if I just open my own gym? And so originally I was going to open it up in my garage. We are going to get a house, get a garage, and just do it out of there and, build from the ground up. And I ended up talking with some friends of mine, and one of them kind of just told me, he's like, dude, just don't be a pussy. Just like go pull into it. Go get a warehouse, open it up. And after talking, I was like, what, you're right. Like you're not going to do anything in life worth doing if you don't risk. There's no, like, you're not going to be successful not being risky. You have to, there's risk, there's inherent risk in everything. And so I was like, what, you're right. Let me do this. I trust myself. And at the time, it was just me. Like I didn't tell Zach about this. It was just me before I was like, I'm gonna open the gym, it's gonna be just me. And then after I started talking with Zach, we had like a 4 or 5 hour conversation about square one where we were talking about a bunch of crazy stuff that we're doing now. And I remember getting off the phone and my fiance's right next to me and I was like, what if I think I should offer Zach a job? I think this would be cool. And she was like, well, it'd be smart. I'm like, yeah, he seems like a really smart dude. And then I texted him like 15 minutes later and I was like, hey man, I'm opening up a gym. Any chance you want to come down here? And so it kind of just led to that. And then the goal of IHT is to be the best performance facility in the country. So that means, when you think about combine prep, like, you got Exos, you got APEC, you got IHT in that conversation as well. We talk about, if you want to talk about baseball training, we're in the same conversation as Driveline and as Tread. Or, you want to talk about all sports training, we're in there with Cressy, we want the name of IHT to be as big as possible and not from we make the most money standpoint, but from we get the best results. Like this is a results-based industry. If you don't get results, that's you're out of luck. In this industry, your goal is to get athletes better. And if you want to get them better, you have to get results. So IHT is going to be one of the biggest performance facilities from a results standpoint, where every athlete that walks, and we can get into this, that every athlete that walks through our door gets better. I'm sure Zach would love to get into this as well, but every single athlete that's walked through our doors has jumped higher or sprinted faster within 6 weeks. That's across the board. We haven't had a single athlete. We've had about a little bit over 100 athletes so far, probably closer to 150, and not a single one has gotten worse or gotten hurt for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that is really interesting and what I like about what you guys are doing is the results are what everyone preaches, and like that's what you want. It's the rate at how fast you produce those results is what kind of blows my mind a little bit. I mean, Zach, we can talk about this too for like what we did with fixing my back. Like I really thought I destroyed my back. I really thought I wasn't gonna be able to walk for a while. I had a PVC pipe as a cane. I was hunched over, excruciating pain. And kids were making fun of me. I couldn't put weights back. I was in the parking lot at a commercial gym, and I literally called Dan, being like, "Dude, you might have to come pick me up." I'm like laying in the parking lot because I couldn't get in my car. I couldn't get in my car. My legs would seize up every time I got in. That's how it was. 405 on SSB for anyone wondering. So it wasn't soft, and I was gonna hit it for 5, but on the third rep, my back blew out. But and then the next day though, I was from a 10 out of 10 pain, it got down to like a 5 out of 10. And then after the week, it was like 2, 1. I was able to do RDLs like a week and a half after, like very lightweight. But I was like, dude, I couldn't even get my hands past my knees in a hinge. So that is what is mind blowing to me. That was like my initial start. And then I do some Jared's work. Jared, I didn't even tell you this. I've been walking on my toes with I've been a toe walker and my feet pointed out my entire life. My girlfriend was making fun of me yesterday because she was like, your feet are on the ground and your toes are straight. Like we're walking around Home Depot. It's like, I don't think you understand how long I've spent trying to fix that. And I've been doing some 5-minute ISOs. And again, going back, I don't even think we were talking about this before. It's just, I thought it was structural, but it wasn't. It was like, I did everything to fix my feet and ankles, stretching out my calves. I even wore like orthopedic boots when I'm sleeping to like rip my feet up. Dude, yeah, terrible experience. And so like for me, that's why I want to like get this, like run with that story for me, because I went through it and talked about it and have done it, and the results, I mean, dude, I can't even believe some of it sometimes.
Yep. So I think what a lot of people need to understand is there's a sharp disconnect between what's happening with your structure and your nervous system. And the communication between the two is probably the most important thing that nobody's focusing on. So in the lens of square one, right? If we don't have enough sensory input through our eyes, through our head positions, our dynamic balance, or local proprioceptive joint actions, if we don't have enough sensory input into those, then we're already starting from a negative when it comes to the prerequisites for human movement, right? We all have to be upright. We all have to use our eyes, the windows to the brain, to be able to take in information from our environment. If sensory input is lacking into any of those three, then the motor expressions, whether that's range of motion, whether that's pain, constant chronic tightness, whatever it is, and think about all the things in the industry that are used to sort of as a band-aid for those issues. Can we get to the root cause? I truly believe now more than ever before that if you can fix those sensory deficits, then the motor expressions are going to be better. So for what you and I did, that's something that we're kind of keeping under wraps, just because it's so crazy that if we can't get to the sensory, if we can't get past that the brain controls everything, then it's going to be hard to take somebody to that, right? But with the 5-minute ISOs, it kind of works a little bit differently. And I'm going to let Jared take this and explain soft premortal cortex and all that stuff. And it kind of works a little bit differently than square one, but it keeps the same foundational principle that the brain controls everything. And when it comes to human expression, there's nothing that's going to replace training hard, like train your freaking ASS off to get whatever goal that you're trying to get. You're not going to sprint faster unless you sprint, right? We all know that. But can we change those expressions to make you more efficient, maybe to expedite that process a little bit quicker? I truly think we can. Now, 5-minute ISOs that Dr. Jared Burton has been teaching Mr. Slater over here are a little bit different. So, Jared, do you want to kind of go into how those work and how those target the brain?
Yeah, so with the stuff I've been learning from Dr. Jared Burton, also a great name, by the way, he just spells it wrong. But with those, with those 5-minute ISOs, it's a little different. It's still like Zach's saying, like if the brain still controls everything, so it's still based off of the idea that we have to understand where the brain is, what is going wrong, or what's not being activated, and then fixing that issue. So essentially what we're doing is the main issue we're identifying is called soft prefrontal cortex. Now you can have a lot of other issues, but the big 90% plus issue that you're going to see is a soft prefrontal cortex issue, which just means that your brain has an issue communicating between the cerebellum, the motor cortex, and the brainstem. That's essentially what's going on. There's a miscommunication between those three. When you have that miscommunication, there are going to be physical signs and there are also going to be neural signs as well you can do different assessments with. But all that means is that one side of your brain is overactive and the left side of your brain is underactive. And you kind of want to think about it as overactive and underactive. The side that's overactive is essentially stealing from the side that's underactive, which is why that side is underactive, which is why that side is staying underactive and why the other side is currently overactive. And so with these 5-minute ISOs, what we're doing is these assessments allow us to identify what areas of the brain are lacking charge, so meaning they don't have enough energy, and what sides of the brain has too much charge or is stealing energy. And from within that, then we can go and say, okay, if you're having an issue on the right side of your brain, there are specific ISOs we need to do in order to restore charge to that side of the brain while getting rid of charge on the other side of the brain. And so that it can go, what's really nice about the nervous system, and it's the same thing in square one that there is in this, or really any neuro system, is that as soon as you give the brain the correct information, you see the change immediately. And that's what's so nice about square one. That's what's super nice about these 5-minute ISOs, is that it only takes one to fix the entire pattern. So you can fix someone essentially with one ISO, one fast stretch, one whatever muscle needs that work. But the reason why you're doing multiple is because there's typically more than one issue there, and you still have to strengthen everything else because it's still training. Like you can't just do one 5-minute ISO and then you're fixed permanently. It typically takes about 2 weeks if you're doing it 3 to 5 days a week to permanently fix a soft prefrontal cortex issue. And then from there you can train. And with square one, it's let's make sure you have enough motor control. Let's make sure there aren't these gaps in your brain. Same thing in the soft prefrontal cortex. Let's make sure your brain is good to go before we throw training on top of it. And this is, when I was talking with Dr. Burton, I think it was last week, he made this really good point. And now I can see it very well, which is if you're doing a rehab program or you're doing some sort of training to fix an issue, when you stop doing that training, if your issue comes back, you were essentially training a compensation. You weren't actually fixing the issue you had going on, because I'm guessing all of us have been hurt in here. We've all done rehab programs that we felt great when we were doing it. And as soon as we all stopped doing it, that issue came back. And it's not that it's the program that was wrong. It's just that the brain had an issue and we were training in this compensated state versus actually going and fixing the issue. So the combination of square one with these 5-minute ISOs, fixing these different brain issues, it's a weapon. And the fact that it can be done in person, the 5-minute ISOs, you can do it remotely, you can do it anywhere. It really makes, like you're saying, it allows us to get these results faster. And that's what we're after, better results and faster results than everyone else.
Either one of you could answer this one, but in terms of Brett's issue with his feet pointed outwards when he's walking, if he fixes that problem when he's walking so that now his feet are pointed forward, would that carry over to the sprints immediately as well? Or since he's doing it at a higher velocity, does it take longer to integrate in more of a sport specific fashion?
So I'll go first and you want to go? Because I got it. So I've seen both. I've seen times where, sorry, you can hear them back there. They're doing the goat drill and they're getting pretty loud. I'm sure you guys can hear them. But
we can't hear it. We're good.
Oh, perfect. So I've seen both. I've seen instances where you fix it right away in something simple, still the same pattern because it's still gait and it will show up. There are also times where it won't. But I think a very important point to say is that you have to fix it at a lower velocity or at a lower stimulus, a lower threat response in order to see it higher. Because in square one's eyes, if you can bench 335, but let's say once you get to 225, your brain starts shutting off, you're technically not safe between 225 and 335. So we have to make sure you're good before we can progress. And it's kind of the same thing with this, is the feet turning out during regular gait fixing that is a great start. But we'll have to see when it gets to the sprint. And then there are other things you can see too, where in the sprint or in any sports action, any action you see on the field, you'll see the same thing in the weight room. So if they're lateral heel striking in their sprint, you'll see an external rotation of the foot, excuse me, during a split squat, during a reverse lunge, during a squat. Same thing with, you know, in a baseball sense, or maybe even javelin. If you're having trouble pronating or getting to the inside, you'll see the same thing on a bench where their hands aren't able to really come in on the bench. They're going to kind of lean towards that lateral edge of the hand. So you'll see similar movement compensations, but it can kind of go, long way of saying it can kind of go both ways. I think it just depends on the athlete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it depends on the athlete, depends on the situation. And this is where like it helps to have a bag. Like it helps to have a lot of things that you can throw at a problem and see if it works. So like Brett, for you, maybe like if your feet are turning out when you're sprinting, or you're running on your on your forefoot more, then you might lack an ankle rocker. So you guys have talked about before about like Chris Corfist. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's one of the best coaches in the game when it comes to speed. Just sort of objectively with all the results and the influence that he's had over the past few years. So you might like lack an ankle rocker, and then maybe you have to do some ankle rocker squats, or do some ankle rocker step ups, or just Dr. Jared Burton loves the ankle rocker ISO hold. And maybe that's what you'll need, or maybe it's just you needed some specific 5-minute ISOs to help create charge or take away charge from certain areas of your body, and maybe that's what fixed it. But yeah, Dan, that's a great question. I guess my answer is I'm not really sure because I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. But definitely we're thinking along the right lines. Like, can this fix this? And then if you know that that's happened before, then you can apply that in future instances.
It's very interesting, and it's definitely something that I'll be working towards. Like the goal is to sprint again, like pain-free. Like it doesn't have to be that fast. I'm not looking for 4.40s. I just want to be able to sprint without being in pain. It's just a goal. It's a simple goal. All right. That's all I want. So if I can do that, I'd say it's a win. But something that I've heard Dan Fichter talk about, and I know he was at Revolutions of Speed at your facility, is that he also has to run a business, and he can't just have 5-minute ISOs like be his selling point. Like he's talked about that before, of like just having kids come in and parents come in with an expectation of what strength and conditioning should look like or what it should be. Like you should be able to clean and squat and do all the stuff that they see professional athletes do. How do you go about that conversation, and how do you try to mix and match the two of blending in? Like I wouldn't even say what you guys do is traditional S&C, but like blending in just a little bit so it kind of looks like, oh, he's using a trap bar. All right, that's good enough. I've seen Saquon do that once maybe. Like how do you go about that conversation? Because I know Dan's talked about that before on podcasts, and I was just curious if you guys had your own thought process behind it.
That's a great question. Honestly, we don't give everyone 5-minute ISOs, and it's very intuitive, where a lot of kids or athletes probably can't handle they don't have the mental cognition, they don't have the focus, the intent to actually do it. There's a reason why you have to be very present in when you're doing it. But we really save those for the athletes that we know can handle it, the athletes we know are going to take it seriously, the athletes who want to take their sport more seriously than, hey, I just want to play in high school. The athletes that we have that want to play in college are pro athletes. Those are the guys that we have this conversation with them. We say, hey, look, here's where you're at right now. We can get you to where you need to be. It's not going to be easy. It's going to suck. Here are the results we've gotten from it, and kind of showing them. And when you show professional athletes or any athlete that takes their sport seriously, you show them, hey, here's where you can be. More times than not, they're going to say, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. Now, it still sucks for them. We have some athletes that I would like to give it to them, but I know that they probably wouldn't like it. But we can still sneak it in there. There are still ways you can actually create change within 10 seconds, a couple reps. So we can kind of sneak in these fixes into their lift. But as marketing, as a true 5-minute ISO, I can see what Dan means, because it's tough. If we have a kid and we say, hey, day one, you got 45 minutes of ISOs, good luck. We're probably going to lose a lot of people right away, but we don't necessarily give that to everyone. It's really hey, can you, because like, with anything, like, yes, that's hyper specific, but in the grand scheme of things, like, if you can't run a consistent training program, if you don't sleep correctly, if you don't have good nutrition, if you don't hydrate, if you don't do any of those things, and I give you these 5-minute ISOs, yes, it's going to fix your brain. Is it going to make you better? Well, probably not, because you don't sleep right, you don't eat well, you don't stay hydrated. You have so many more things that are way bigger than that to take care of, where it doesn't necessarily matter until you've mastered those things. So, yeah, I would love to have every athlete do 5-minute ISOs, because Zach and I both know what it can do for the athlete, but a lot of them just can't handle it from either a intent standpoint, physical standpoint. They have other stuff they have to do first. But I wish we could give it to everyone, but that's just not the case.
Zach, you mentioned having a lot of different tools in your tool bag. And so what's something that used to be in your toolkit that's not in anymore?
Dynamic warm-up.
That's a good question. The dynamic warm-up, yeah, we've cut down a lot of what we do in our warm-up. It's just kind of RPR, go drill and hop in. But now even sometimes, like in my own training, I don't really warm up too much. I'll just, either start with like a 5-minute ISO or start with something else, and then maybe spike ball and then go. That's never left the program. Let me think. That's a really good question. I don't use RPR as much for specific issues anymore. I'll kind of go to square one first, and then I'll go from there. Now, I still use RPR for really specific issues. If somebody has a hamstring strain or a quad strain or some sort of muscular issue that I know like RPR works for, I'll use that. I'm starting to use that a little less, even though we use it with most of our athletes that have issues. Geez, man, that is such a good question. I guess in the triphasic stuff, I used to do a lot of yielding isometrics, a lot of submax eccentrics. We only use those with our younger athletes now, and with our older and more advanced athletes, we'll do the super maximal eccentrics and the overcoming isometrics. And that's something that's new in the triphasic 2 book. When I went to Springfield, I was told by one of my professors that super maximal eccentrics were dangerous for our athletes. We haven't had a single athlete get hurt doing a super maximal eccentric. And again, it's used kind of just like if that athlete's ready for it, we'll throw it at them. But I guess that would probably be the one thing that's changed the most.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always like a good sign whenever you see strength coaches in the industry being able to look back on, all right, what did I used to use and not use it anymore, and then be a forward thinker in the field with some of that neurological stuff that you guys are talking about. So, it's definitely a breath of fresh air, and that's part of Brett and I's mission, is to give people like you guys a platform to come on the show and talk about your experience. So, yeah, it's been refreshing meeting and being able to connect with people that are forward thinkers and trying to move the field forward.
I mean, day one of my strength and conditioning class, I wore a West Side Barbell shirt. And I seen day one, senior year, senior fall, walked in strength and conditioning class, West Side Barbell shirt. I was like, yeah, your book sucks. And the professor called me out on it. Dr. Fight, I still joke about him with Adam Fight all the time, that he remembers it. And he said, it was like, dude, that's a bold shirt to wear day one. And then I've talked about it before. It's like, I was in the wave of max strength is all that matters. Being able to produce as much force is all that matters. Like pushing into the ground as hard as you can for a sprint is all that matters. But then listening to Dan, Chris, Cal, like hearing all those guys, and then you guys opening up a whole different rabbit hole for me to dive head first down, is that it's a series of collisions, it's falling, it's being able to absorb eccentric stress and be able to maintain position and then absorb into that position before you even worry about producing force. And it's so crazy to me that so many people still have it backwards, and then they kind of skip those steps. And something that, like, reference triphasic 2, and I've read it and wanted to do the sample program in the back, but then realized it's 10 different exercises per block, and I don't know what any of them are. So, and that is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called performance cycling, correct? All right. So, do you use that for your more advanced athletes inside your weight room? And next question with the groups, because I've heard, I think it was Welty talking about it with at Minnesota with Cal. He was just on, so we had to give him a shout out. But he said like everything's color coded, and he has like 10 interns to work and make sure the weight room doesn't become an absolute disaster. Like, how do you go about structuring and planning your weight room for something like as complex as performance cycling?
Yeah, that is such an excellent question, because that is the biggest question for most people is when they look at the exercises. I don't have the equipment to do all these. I don't have the manpower to coach these lifts. That's the biggest thing for most people. Now, your athletes, after about 6 weeks, they'll know exactly what to do and how to do everything. If you're willing to wait those like 4 to 6 weeks for your athletes to figure it out, then everything will run a lot smoother. Now, shout out to Adam Fight, because he sent us one of his employees, Connor Joyce, who's helping us coach, who's currently coaching the session right now. And this team that's working out right now is about 6 weeks in.
Yeah.
And they are completely locked in. Every single person knows exactly what to do for all the exercises. But that is a huge barrier of entry for most coaches, that like, yeah, Cal has everything color coded. Red is ISO, yellow's power, green is strength, like, and everything's set up perfectly every day because there are a lot of interns there. There's a lot of manpower there. But I think what got missed in the triphasic book is that like people look at the workouts, but the principles are the most important thing. Like, you can do performance pattern cycling no matter what program you run. You can cycle between exercises that target muscles in the front side of the body and the back side of the body, or the inside versus the outside, agonist versus antagonist, and then progress the velocity throughout those exercises in your blocks. And I think the first coach to do it was Gilles Clemetti or something. Clemetti, he was like with Carmelo Bosco. I don't know. It was in the 70s or something. He was one of the Eastern European or Russian coaches. So I think he was the first one to do it. The anterior posterior performance pattern cycling is one of the most effective principles that any coach can apply. You'll find that like your athletes won't drop off as much. We've even had instances where asymmetries like in force production between the left and the right leg measured on the 1080 kind of go away after you put somebody in the proper pattern by structuring the workout properly. Like, those are just some of the things that the principles in the book kind of have the potential to help you with. So even if you don't, let's say, want to run triphasic, or you don't want to move too far away from what you're doing, there are a lot of great principles in there you can still apply and make it work for whatever program you choose to run.
So that's where my question will come probably to Jared too, with like, you have an athlete that has the issues of needing to do the 5-minute specific isometrics, but they also might be on a time crunch and they kind of need that performance cycle of training as well to be able to still train, but then still work on their patterning issues or their brain issues and what they have. How would you recommend almost like blending the two? This is a very selfish question because this is what I'm trying to figure out. It's like, how can I like blend? I'll just say me. How can I blend the two together? If you even recommend that, like, is that even smart to do? It's like, say, like, I know, like, I don't really have a timeline. I can train for the rest of my life. There's no game or anything, but like, how do you go about inserting the 5-minute isometrics to get the issues resolved, but then also still layer in performance training on top of that?
So we have an athlete right now currently doing that. So actually a couple. Well, the one I'm thinking of, Aiden Hunter. So he's a baseball guy. He graduated college. He's trying to get into pro ball, either affiliate or indie ball. And with him, we actually had this conversation probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is how can we integrate these things together? Because he was already training 4 days a week. And so we asked him, we're like, hey, do you mind if we start doing these other things? He's like, I don't care, give it all to me. Because we were going to DV hammer and Jay Schrader him. We were just going to drop him off boxes and put him through hell to get him throwing 100. But you can totally do this. So how we are doing it with him is he's essentially going every other day. So he's going, Monday will be, people I see he's in power right now.
Yeah,
he's in power. So
power, yeah.
Monday will be his triphasic lift, we'll call it. Tuesday will be the isos, Wednesday will be another triphasic lift, Thursday isos, Friday triphasic, and then Saturday isos. So you can just blend it in with regular training. Now, speaking of the Welty name drop, so him and Saz are doing like 3 sessions a day, and they're doing these. What I'm putting them through is just mean, but they're doing these isos during the day throughout their lift, and they don't really seem to be hindered by it. I mean, in fact, they texted me the other day. Both of them have dropped, I think it was 0.05 off their flying 10, and they're doing 2-3 lifts a day, including the ones I'm giving them. So if you're going to do them on the same day, I don't believe it hinders your training. I think it is important though that you do mix them in somehow, whether it's doing it on the same day, before, after, especially if you're not doing anything that day. Doing it that day is great. And this is another point I want to bring up. I said earlier, but making the changes can be made in a couple seconds or a couple reps. So let's say you don't have, let's say you're an athlete and you're in school and you have your team lift and then you got homework, the rest of the night. And so you don't have time to do another 45 to an hour workout. Well, you can find the isos that fix you. So like it might be a tricep, it might be a post down, it might be a glute, it might be a hamstring, it could be a gastroc, whatever it is. It could even be saccades. Whatever fixes you, you can apply that movement to only a couple reps. Let's say if it's a fast stretch, or 10 seconds if it's an iso. So let's say right tricep is what clears you up. Now you could, and let's say it's the iso, you could do that for 5 to 10 seconds during your team lift. Just go off to the side, just do a tricep overcoming iso. Hopefully no one's gonna get mad at you, but 10 seconds is enough time to create a change. We've seen gait, posture, balance, proprioception change within 10 seconds of applying the correct fix. So you don't have to do a whole lift of it. You could do it during your lift. You could do it right after. You could do it during practice. Let's say you're at basketball practice. You're in your layup lines. Just hit that iso real quick. Or let's say you're at baseball. You're waiting for something to happen. You're just hanging out in the outfield. Just hit that real quick. You can do these things throughout the day, and it will fix you. We had one of our athletes who had a really, really bad back issue. He was a quarterback at one of the biggest high schools here in the area. Crazy injury. He had a 5 bulging discs, and an L4 pars defect. He, while he was here, we wanted him to come back in because he got hit the other day and separated his AC joint. And long story short, he got smacked. But with his back, the interesting point about that is his back is still healthy, even though he just got concussed and had a shoulder injury because he got hit. But we fixed him in 4 days using these isos. But what he also did is he went home and he would do his isos throughout the day in class. So during whatever math or history class he was in, he was hitting that iso in class. He'd probably just sit in his chair hitting it. But you can make these changes in a very, very short amount of time as long as you apply the right stimulus. I think that's an important thing, is that you have to apply the correct stimulus in order to get the change you want. You can't just, I made a post about this. You can't just like throw stuff at a wall and say, oh, it's hard, it's going to create a change, therefore it's going to work. I mean, that's not how it works. A lot of people talk about doing impulses. You can't just ram 1,000 impulses into your shoulder and expect it to feel better. Is it going to feel better? I mean, probably, because you're stressing the tissue, getting tissue adaptations, but you're not fixing the root cause of the problem. So you have to be very, very specific in what you choose to apply. Then once you found out what works, you just need 5 or 10 seconds to make that change.
Jared, what I think is funny about that is that when I was in 4th grade, I probably had like 25 pencils in my desk, and I took a rubber band and I banded them all together so that I could fit it in my hand, and I would just do like 100 curls at a time during class. I was 10 years old. There's probably 1 pound.
The forearm gripper.
Oh, I brought that to school too.
I would bring it to school. I would bring it to school. I would do like 100 inside my desk so no one could find me. And then I also had a weighted stress ball that I did the same thing. I mean, we're definitely outside the norm. You guys were talking about like your average athlete. I think like that cares. I think we're definitely outside. All 4 of us are definitely outside that norm of doing stupid shit. Like we hear this all the time. Just doing crazy stuff. Something that you alluded to of like doing like the Jay Schroeder stuff and like throwing people off boxes. How close do you think he was to being right? I mean, he didn't know square one wasn't a thing. RPR wasn't a thing. But what from my understanding, listening to him talk, reading his research, not even his research, just his like anecdotal evidence, and like what Adam Archuleta was saying on Tony Holler's podcast, it sounds like he was right about a lot of stuff, but I don't understand if he knew that he was right. Like how close was he to that?
Oh my gosh, man. There's a reason we keep bringing up Jay Schrader. I mean, there's a reason you're not going to stop hearing about DB Hammer as long as I'm alive. Yeah, no, those guys, those two in particular, are some of the closest that anybody's ever been to answering the question about elite performance. I think Jay had it right where he was going to stress you. You were going to do the same workout for maybe 2 months at a time, every day, same thing, right? Where he's hooking, what's that one lady?
The ARP. He's using the ARP wave.
Hooking up the ARP wave to
max to the thing.
Max it out, right? And you're holding the same 5-minute ISOs every single day, right? Or like DB Hammer, where we're gonna neurotype you, and then you're only gonna get what's going to bring up the whole thing, right? Like if you're already really, really strong and you can sit under a barbell and produce a lot of force, regardless of the time, we need to bring up the rate of force development, the neuro or the neuro rate stuff, right? So like those guys, some of the closest that have ever been, right? Some of the Eastern coaches, man, all those guys had it figured out.
Bondarchuk, I mean, especially talking about throwing, talk about Bondarchuk. Like, you want to talk about one of the greatest, like, throwing strength coaches, throwing coaches. Granted, they're probably all in the sauce, but even Bondarchuk, you break out and then you completely change everything you're doing, stress the absolute piss out of them. I mean, I think honestly, not just Schroeder and DB Hammer, like the Eastern Bloc Europeans, they're Soviets. Those guys had it figured out.
Yeah,
I mean, you read if you dare to read Super Training, I mean, that book is just littered with gold. I mean, it's the encyclopedia of strength coach. Like,
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, it's more of an encyclopedia than a book because it's hard to read cover to cover.
Yeah, but I mean, I think as strength coaches in the Western world, I think we've moved away from the idea of training the piss out of someone versus now we're very centered around what's your sport, what are the shapes we're going to see in your sport, what are the injuries we're going to see, how do we fix that? And then that's kind of evolved into this soft-minded training where we're seeing professional athletes in their offseason pick up the pink dumbbell, stand on one leg, and we're calling it elite performance training. It's you're telling me who's the running back for the Ravens? Why can't I? Derrick Henry. Yeah, that was terrible. You're telling me Derrick Henry is out here training on a Bosu ball with a kettlebell. Like, I'm sorry, that dude, that's not going to do anything for him. Like, you got to stress your athletes. And I think the Soviets in the Eastern Bloc, I think they had more of it figured out than we do now, currently in this Western world. Now, I think the closest were DB Hammer and Jay Schrader. I think they're the closest ones ever been. But I think that we need to look more into what the Soviets were doing, what the Eastern Bloc guys were doing when it comes to elite performance training. And I think one thing they did is, and you said this earlier, is they train dangerous. And that's something I think we have to get back to, is you can't be afraid to hurt your athletes a little bit. You can't be afraid for them to get a little beat up in training.
Just a little.
I'm not saying
beat them up a little.
Yeah. Not saying like, hey, let's blow out your ACL. Yeah, no. But hey, coach, my knee's a little sore right now. Good. Yeah. Hey, my ankle's a little sore. Good. My shoulder. Good. Because now that's something for your body to super compensate to and overcome and adapt to. You can't expect someone to get like just progressive overload. If you're lifting 100 pounds, you're not going to get stronger until you lift more weight. That's just not how it works. So why have we gone away from that line of thinking and think, okay, well, we can't stress our athletes anymore. We got to keep them safe. Well, if you keep your athletes safe and you keep them from not getting hurt in training, if you're not training hard, you're now going to increase their probability of getting hurt in their sport, which is the one thing that matters to these athletes. They don't care about training. They care about, am I good in my sport? Can I play my sport through the required number of games?
Yeah. And one thing that I have talked with Mr. Slater over here a lot about is that and I don't think I've ever said this specifically, but one thing that I really, really loved about Jay Schrader is that his goal was, I should be able to wake you up in the middle of the night, go out to the road, and go sprint as fast as you can. That's exactly what Sam Davis said on your podcast with him, okay? Is my athlete can call me at any time and say, hey, go out to the road and rip a full speed sprint. That is what I think we are all chasing. And that is what I think the older generation of coaches, they were kind of dialed into that. Like, if my athlete's an athlete, they should be able to do whatever it is they need to do at any time, right? And I think that's why in my mind, I'm moving a little further away from the periodization of everything. And it's just, you should be ready to go at all times. Like your off season, yes, it is maybe an off season, but we need to be trained to go. Like, and if your brain's locked in, that's going to make things a lot easier. So Jay definitely had that figured out before a lot of other people, and so did DB.
What would you say to people that say that that's not an attribute that's worth chasing?
That's well,
It's unfortunate.
it's unfortunate. So if like, do you want to be like Randy Moss, where a cheater don't stretch? You can just go run go routes all day. Like I personally, I would love to do that personally. I'd love to be like Moss, where I can go run a 9 on you and just blow right by it. Doesn't matter what time of day it is. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, we're gonna go eat. Like I think that is the one quality that I would love for all my athletes to have is, hey, I feel sore, but I know that that's not going to impact the way I perform because I can choose when I want to perform. That is the ultimate form of freedom when it comes to training, when it comes to sport, is whenever, wherever, whoever, I'm ready to go.
Think about it from a sport coach perspective. Every sport coach hates warm-ups. They all hate the spending. They all hate the dynamic warm-up they do before their sport. They all hate all this stretching and everything everyone does. Fine. My athlete's good to go. He doesn't need to stretch. He doesn't need to warm up. Hey, you need him to go, whatever it is you need him to do. You need him to go hop in a basketball game. You need him to go, throw a baseball. You need him to do whatever. Like maybe throwing a baseball, throwing a football. You got to warm up your arm a little bit. But from hey, am I good to go? Yeah, just show up and go. I mean, that's what every sport coach wants. Their athlete to show up and be ready to go. And we're just giving them that tool now.
Yeah. And I'm we've gotten into this a lot with people online. I'm not anti warm up. I think you need to do whatever you need to do to get ready. I like to warm up, but I don't have to. And I don't think you should if you don't want to. Like I was talking with one of Chris Corfus athletes who came in the other day. He plays at the Citadel. And I asked him, I'm like, so do you do RPR every day? And he's like, nah, only when I feel like it. And I'm like, okay, so when you went to go train with Chris, did you do RPR every day before you sprinted? And he said, no, just when I was sore, just when I felt like I needed it. And then that's when I used it. And like at the University of Minnesota, RPR gets used really heavily. Like they'll use it every single day before every single lift. They'll use it in the lift after every single block. Cal has his reasons for that. But the point is that if you don't want to use that, your training and your preparation should make you, able to do whatever you want, whenever you want.
I think that is definitely missing. And I think it's like that meme that the incel, the dude that's raging in the middle, and then like the enlightened one is like, I don't have to warm up. I need a full 30-minute warm up and foam roll, RPR, stretch, get the heart rate at a certain level. Like that's the middle one. And then the other side is like, I don't need to warm up. It's like the two ends of the spectrum. And I think that is what we were talking about a little bit with like why it's just so misconstrued and why I think it's not being understood. And we were talking a little bit before is that I think the barrier of entry to being like a high level strength coach, to be able to train high level athletes, I think that's the difference between the West and the Eastern Bloc with the Soviets and those guys. Because those guys, I think, really gave a shit and like were in it to make their athletes the best. Like Mother Russia, Soviet Union, like
they had to do it. Yeah,
they had to.
Dude,
if you didn't get your athletes to perform, like
straight to gulag.
You ain't seeing your family the rest of your life. Like that was the reality of it. And that's why they push like the pharmaceuticals a little bit, which definitely gets brought up a lot of like what they were taking, but whatever. I don't really care. I think everyone should take steroids to some degree. See what happens. But let's push the human body to the max. Let's see what.
You gotta work for the advanced games.
Yeah, the advanced games, dude. One
swimmer. Did you see? What was that dude's name?
I don't know, but he broke the record like second day.
That's for like the size of my torso.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking. The enhanced games, I'm a huge advocate for it. I would love to see I'd love to see how far the human body can go. I think that's just pure entertainment and a little sick on my end. But like that's what we were saying before. It's just like that's like DB Hammer, Jay, like those guys that were really caring about elite performance. Like they wanted their athletes to become the best.
talking about that with the 5-minute bench test. We were talking about this the other day. Like if you know how to stimulate the hormonal response in a person, you can get those quote unquote anabolic properties that you see with these steroids. You want some growth hormone, do a 5-minute bench test.
Yeah.
Like,
you ever heard of Dan Ficker's 5-minute bench test?
I've heard of his bench every day for 40 days or something like that. I never heard that.
Dude, like it's you take 60%. I think it's 60%. If I'm misquoting this, I'm so
I think
sorry.
it's like
But
40 to 50.
yeah, I no, I think it's like
60?
yeah, I think it might be like from maybe 50 to 60% of your 1 rep max in bench, and you try to get 50 reps in 5 minutes. It is brutal because those last few reps when you're at like 35 and it feels like a 1 rep max on every single rep, but that's where you're getting the huge hormonal response.
And that, well,
Yeah.
because like
Great
if
modality.
that's what we're after, if we're after elite performance, in a sense, we also have to think, how can we get close to these steroid type enhancements in our training? How can we load the body and create adaptations that cause the release of testosterone, that cause the release of all these other androgens that we need? So I think, again, I think a huge thing I've said, just stress the piss out of your athletes. Like, you have to train hard, and then given all these tools we have, we can get away with, and then this might open up another can of worms, but we can get away with overtraining. Like you and I would talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And we talk about with Sam and Trevor
Mhm.
that it's better to overtrain than to undertrain an athlete every single time.
So my only thing with that is I'm in agreement, but I think you need to have a certain baseline knowledge to like back that up.
Oh, yeah.
And because I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Tufts University lacrosse team, where like 9 of them got rhabdo because they had a Navy SEAL come in. So like, yeah, that's stressing the athlete. Like you really stressed them. Like you got them to the point where they couldn't walk anymore for like a month. So I think when people, again, going back to saying like where do we go from like not stressing them to babying them almost and like doing the Bosu ball stuff. And I think that's what people see. Like that's what gets news media coverage is that they see, oh, they trained really hard, so they got rhabdo and they're sore for a month and they can't work out. So I don't even know how to even phrase this question, but like, what do you guys think of that? I was like the Navy SEAL mental toughness type of like, that's hard training versus it being smart and hard and actually beneficial to elite performance.
Ooh, it's a fine line to walk. And it kind of ties into the other question you asked of earlier. You guys were asking about like, is every athlete in our gym going to be doing 5-minute ISOs? And the answer is no. Like you have to choose the hard. Like we're not gonna sit here and tell you like, I mean, we can sit here and be like, hey, this is exactly what you got to do to get to where you want to be, but it's ultimately you that have to choose to take that route, right? Like we've had this conversation with some of our athletes of like, okay, these are the 5-minute ISOs that you're gonna need to do in order to be feeling a little bit better, so we can train to the level that we need to train at right now. And one of the athletes looked at me and said straight up, no, like I'm not gonna do this 5-minute ISO. I'm not gonna do these. And I was like, okay, that's fine. We can find something else for you to do. So you definitely have to be smart and you have to be intelligent about where and when you choose to do certain things. You have to know who you're working with, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the athlete, your former athlete Frank, maybe you can talk about him a little bit. Like he chose to drive 6 hours to train with
We
us
had
for 2 days straight.
one of the athletes I used to train messaged me on Twitter the other day, or X, and he has a Bankert tear. Basically, it's like it's a diagonal tear in the labrum. Well, more so from subluxing the shoulder rather than from like a dislocation. But he's training with us remotely right now, and he wanted to come down here. He drove 6 hours from Virginia Beach to Charleston, and then lifted 5 times in 2 days. Did 5-minute iso lifts in 2 days. Did 3 the first day, then did 2 the second day. Not every athlete is going to do that. That's an athlete right there where no matter what we ask him to, he's every strength coach's dream athlete. No matter what you ask him to do, he's going to do. But like Zach's saying, we don't have every athlete like that right now. Like in this group that's lifting right now, I'd say 95% of them would do everything we ask them to do. But there's a good 2 or 3 that I can probably think of off the top of my head that probably wouldn't do it. And that's fine. But you have to know as a coach what type of athlete you're working with. Because you can have the perfect program, you can have the most advanced everything on the planet, but if you can't get compliance from your athletes, you can throw your program out the window. It doesn't matter. If your athletes aren't going to do the program to how you want it to be done, your program doesn't mean shit. If I sit down and I write the perfect program where I know in 3 months you're going to be peaked, you're going to be the strongest you've ever been, fastest you've ever been, and on day one I give this program to my athlete and he says, "Coach, I don't want to do that. That's too much." Well, fuck my program. I got to find something else that'll get him that'll help him out in the way he needs to be helped out. So, yeah, it 1,000% depends on who your athlete is. I mean, like, do we all want the athlete that'll do anything we ask them to do? 100%, but that's not the case. That's what makes a good coach. Can you get this one athlete better who doesn't even want to be here? And then can you get the professional athlete who's getting paid $80 million a year and wants to get better? Can you get both of those athletes better? That's what makes a good coach, and everyone else in between. Can you get the 12-year-old who we could go on and on about what 12-year-old should be doing, but can you get the 12-year-old better? And then can you get the 40-year-old athlete that's on his last legs? Can you get him better as well? And everyone in between. That's what makes a good coach. Not what type of program you write, but can you get those two athletes on opposite ends of the spectrum better?
Something that you just said, the 12-year-old. I mean, I worked with youth that's how I started. I worked with youth for years. And I noticed after COVID, like, not putting that to blame, but it was a clear shift of difference of just them wanting to move and them wanting to pay attention. And they just feel like they're balls of energy that couldn't be coached, no matter how hard you try. So how would you go about, just quickly, like, a group of, like, you get a 10U baseball team in, like, what is that session looking like? And just what do we got on the menu for them?
Games are the best way to deal with kids that are unruly, that don't want to be there. You just play games with them the entire time. I coached a bunch of middle schoolers last year. All we did was play games. The reward was the weight room. It was like, if we can play this game, follow the rules, and everybody has fun, then we can go lift. And I turned the weight room into a reward. And then we also flipped it. So we would do only weight room, and then if they did good in the weight room, then we would give the games as a reward. So all the kids that loved lifting would get what they wanted, and all the kids that loved the games would get what they wanted. And then they would both force each other to do the thing that they didn't want to do, and that kind of worked the best for me in my situation. But we don't work with a ton of youth, like super young athletes.
Rightfully so. I mean, I would, if I had the choice, I'd never work with them again. But
we got tricked into training a youth athlete. So his mom came in with the athlete a couple months ago, and then they didn't sign up for not months. Like when we first opened, they ended up signing up a couple weeks ago. But she came in, and I was like, "How old's your son?" She's like 12, and I was like, "Oh, well, we don't typically train younger than 13. We do have like a interview process so they can come in and talk." And she was like, "Well, he's like super dedicated to it, and and she talked. I was like, "You know what? Yeah, we'll try it out." And I thought that he was just a little undersized for a 12-year-old, which is fine. You got a lot of 12-year-olds that are undersized. Comes in, and Zach goes asking how old he is, and I hear he goes, "Oh, I'm 10." And I was like, "What do you mean you're 10?"
Mom lied about his age to get him in with us.
Hey, that's a good mom. That's a good mom. That's a good mom.
He's got the birth certificate with the crayon on it.
Let's roll.
But here's the thing. This kid is so insanely athletic. If you saw what we posted the other day, this kid, what was the box? 30,
I think it was 38 inches.
38 inches.
Yeah.
This dude jumps backwards. Backwards box jump, lands in like a deep pistol squat at the top. And this kid's insane. Didn't he jump a 44?
Yeah, on the box.
Jumped a 44-inch box. Like running. This kid's insanely athletic. So, and here's an interesting point is like, hey, with that kid, does that kid need the weight room? You could argue, yeah, that kid's having that output that young of an age. Hey, let's start building him some good habits in the weight room. So when he does physically mature, his bones start to mature, starts to build more density. Hey, now he's got a good base where we can lift him really hard when he needs it. But for any other kid that age, like no other 10-year-old's doing that. Like this kid's freaky. Like he's freaky.
Yep. And then a lot of people ask like, how do we train younger athletes if we do like the triphasic principles? And the answer is that like what we're teaching our intern Connor right now is that, hey, you can apply the same principles. Just scale it down. Way down. You don't have to do 30 exercises. We can do 10 exercises and just anterior posterior cycle and watch what happens. Watch what happens to the sprint. Watch what happens to the jump.
You could still run your 2 main blocks, your 4 accessory movements, 45 minutes, call it a day, and still run the performance pattern cycle.
Yeah.
Like you can apply it. It's just formulating your exercises. And what's interesting too about the performance pounding cycle is when you dive into, Dr. Burton stuff, it makes even more sense why it works. And it just kind of proves itself over again. So, I mean, look, like that, I mean, honestly, if you don't run traffic, like we don't have to run trifecta, but if you were to run and if you were to take one thing from that, I think you were asked this on someone's podcast, or you talked about it, the one thing you would take is the performance pounding cycle.
That's probably that'd be it. Yeah, changes a lot about how your athletes move. I'd suggest giving it a try. Give it a try, see what happens, see if you like it. I mean, people do it anyway. It's like the only people that don't are bodybuilders, right? Because my chest is not as developed as my back, so therefore I have to do more chest. But I mean, why do we have an anterior day? Why do we have a posterior day? Why do we have I'm a fan of upper lower splits, but for most people, I think that, the anterior posterior cycling is going to work the best unless you're like that power lifter or bodybuilder, those niche examples.
I mean, my favorite days were like the chest and back days, and then leg days were always squat and hinge. I mean, Louis was big on that too, of just training. Like he was always, his big thing was training the weak points and like making sure you're extremely conditioned and strong in the weak points. And that's why they love their max effort testing, not even testing, just max effort days. Whereas if you failed a squat or a bench at a specific part of the lift, like he knew exactly what exercise to give you and to absolutely hammer it. So I that's why I like hearing what you guys say, and then knowing my background, like the powerlifting thing. Like Louis had a lot of stuff right and applied it to powerlifting only, but there's a lot of principles I think that he was right about, but he just gets you only did equipped powerlifting, so it didn't work.
He was very good at what he did.
He's also
powerlifting,
and he's way ahead of his time as well. I mean, you want to talk about equipped or not equipped powerlifting? Didn't they have, what was it, 400 something thousand pound deadlifters?
Really?
They have like 400 something. I might be misquoting that, but they had like, no, I'm misquoting, but they had like a crazy. I'm definitely misquoting that. They had a crazy number of like 1,000 pound squatters or 1,000 pound deadlifters out there. I forgot which one it was, or maybe it was. I forgot it was, but they had some crazy number. I remember when I first dug into Louis stuff. I mean, if you think about it, it's the same thing as taking for a sport. Hey, you need to bench. What has to be strong? Well, obviously your chest, right? What else? Well, your triceps have to be strong. You have to be able to have strong scaps to set that down, right? What next? Your forearms have to be super strong to grip the bar. So you're just basing your work off of what your goal is, which is all we're doing, which is all the performance power cycle is doing. What's our goal? Have really fast athletes. All right, because all train anterior posterior. It's the same line of thinking, just with a different outcome in mind.
Something interesting for him is the dynamic effort day. I thought that was very interesting for powerlifters. It's just being able to repeat force output over and over again over an extended set and the weights that are 40% their max, but with the heaviest, thickest bands you could possibly find, and then still trying to move it. His stuff was really cool, and you kind of connect the dots, and Dan talks about that now too. Like the more he learns and researches, it's just connecting dots and trying to put pieces together. And that's the main goal of this podcast too. Dan was saying before, just getting people on to definitely thinking outside the box and seeing like what's possible. And just,
were you talking about Dan Fichter and me, or are you talking about me both times?
I talked about Dan Fichter the first time, and then you said it, and then you the second time.
I was trying. I looked this up. I don't want to be
names. We need names.
Yeah.
We got Jared Slater, Jared Burton. We got.
I don't want to be misquoted. Not 400. I don't know why I said that. They had 17. 2016, they had 17 squat over 1,000 pounds. Which,
I mean, that's crazy. Well,
Still
speaking
fun.
about Louis Simmons, though, Mark Bell, square one. He was just
Mark Bell.
Mark Bell is a real one, man, because he gave Cal the chance to get on YouTube and talk about RPR before like anybody was talking about it, like 6-7 years ago maybe. But then you got like
high school athletes right there in you.
Yeah, now you got no, shoot, they're rubbing off on me. Like Mark Bell giving square one a shot, like that is big time, man. Well, I don't know what happened with his Instagram.
So here's the thing.
YouTube.
So Sean,
he got like, he's not good. Never mind. Anyway,
so Sean, because I called Sean because we're hosting a square one course here in February, January 31st, February 1st of next year. I was talking to Sean about it, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm flying out to go work on Mark Bell."
That's sick.
I had to stop. I was like,
Wait, sick.
What? I guess Mark's foot or something.
It was his heel. He hasn't been able to jog for 8 months because he had really bad heel pain, and he's been.
Watch the video that they posted with him.
I saw it and I watched maybe 15, 20 seconds of it. I didn't see like what they did with him,
Yeah, he's running on the treadmill.
but he's running on the treadmill now. Yeah, something that I've talked about this. I think this was on the Caden podcast. I don't even know if it was, but I remember talking about Mark Bell and his open mindedness to all this. Like, here you go. Like, you have this guy doing like benching 900 pounds, like prime Louis Simmons West Side guy, but then he's doing like. Granted, he's been going down some rabbit holes, but he's doing David Weck stuff. He's doing functional pattern stuff. Like, he's talking with Power Plus, learning about Marinovich stuff. Now he's doing Square One, and it's just interesting to see like his approach to training. And I think, give or take, some things I might not go down the rabbit hole on that he does, but his stuff is like, it's cool to see someone at that level still being open-minded and trying new things and letting people know that there's other areas to dive into.
I think there's a very important difference to make though between being open-minded and being like cynical and versus critical. Because you and I were talking about this the other day, where I think to an extent you can be open-minded, but you still have to be a first principle thinker. I think that's an important point to make, because you can get lost in, you know, the Goda, the David Weck world, being so open-minded that you fall in these rabbit holes. Like, you still, like, don't get me wrong, Square One is as outside the box gets, but Square One is still a first principle system. And so I think that's what's important to note, is that if you are going to be open-minded, which I think is, I mean, we're probably some of the most open-minded strength coaches on the planet, but we're both critical and we're both understanding that, hey, this still has to make sense and it still has to work. Versus just being open-minded for the sake of, oh, I'm open-minded. I think
like, you have to test, you have to verify, right? Like, I can't sit up here and say Square One works because that's just what I've heard. It's, you have to experience it for yourself, and then you have to test it on 500 people, and then you can say, hey, this works or doesn't work. But if you don't go through that journey of, yeah, I just heard about it, I don't vibe with it, this and that, then you can't really speak on it. I'm sorry. Like, there are coaches out here that dispute what we do, and it's like, okay, did you take the course? Did you talk with the person that came up with it? Did you test it on a bunch of people? Did you kind of analyze your role and your bias and all of those things that go into how you make decisions about things? Like, can you be critical while also being open-minded, while also not being cynical? That, to me, is the most important recipe for discerning whether a coach is a good coach or not. Like, have you explored all these things? Have you taken the time and the effort and escaped the barrier of entry? And now you're over on the other side where you're testing all this other stuff in the sandbox. Like, if you can do all that, I think you're a good coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with anything you guys said. I mean, clearly it's passion driven. It's something that you guys truly want. And I think that's also cool because in the world of social media, it's really easy to fake. And I think you guys do a great job not faking it. I think it's...
But that's funny you say that, because a lot of people think we are faking it. There are a lot of people who think that we're faking our results and that we're, you know, beefing it up for the camera. And the thing is, we honestly can't post half the stuff we do because it's too crazy.
Yeah, nobody would believe it.
No one would believe us. Like,
I have a hard enough time already.
Like, we've had a bunch, like, for example,
nobody would believe that. So why would we even try and talk about it online? You know, like,
there have been, I mean, like the stuff that we post is, I think we're teetering now. We're trying to kind of put more out there about the crazy stuff we're doing. But like, the crazy thing we post so far is Frank came here for 2 days and his shoulder's good to go.
mm-hmm.
And the dude has a tear in his, like a MRI imaging verified tear, and he threw with no pain. Like, we're talking in 2 days. And so people can, you can say we're faking it, whatever it is, but you have to try it out. And you have to give it a chance. And I think if people or the coaches or athletes were to give what we're doing a chance, okay, prove it to me, I think then it would be a little more widely accepted. And I think one thing that a lot of coaches do is they find their system and they're like, this works for me, therefore there's nothing else out there that could possibly work because what I do works. I think it's a very, very dangerous trap to fall into, and a lot of coaches do because they feel comfortable. They don't want to be proven wrong. They're comfortable where they're at. They're comfortable with their results. They're in a position where they're not, they're in a position where either they might lose their job, and so therefore they have to do what works, or they're in a position where they have their job secured, so they don't care anymore about the results. But if you're in both situations where, hey, you got to make it work or you're gone, or you got a sustained job, go outside the box. One, you got nothing to lose in both situations. You're gonna get fired. Go balls to the wall. Go try and find the golden goose, or the I forget what it's called, the some medieval thing. Like, go find the whatever it is that's going to give you the best results. Or if you're comfortable, push the limit. You got nothing to worry about. Like, go find what the upper echelon of performance is. And I think that's something that a lot of coaches don't really care about anymore. They kind of just care about, hey, what can I post that'll give me clicks? What can I post that'll make me look way smarter than I am?
Thanks for tuning in.
And if you enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and review and share the show, because the only way that this show grows is if you like it, share it, and tell your friends and family about it.
New episode every Monday.